Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Our guest today is Antonio Vitorino. He's the Director General of the International Organization for Migration, and he joins us from Geneva. Thank you very much, Mr. Vitorino, for appearing on France 24.
Thank you.
Mr. Vitorino, the COP26 is about to begin in Glasgow. You've appointed a climate envoy. Why is it so important for your organization to deal head-on with the challenge of climate change?
First of all, thank you for this opportunity. For us, it is very important because every day now we already see the impacts of climate change in people's mobility, in migration, and therefore having a special envoy aims to raise awareness of the fact that it's very important that leaders live up to the commitments taken in Paris. But it is equally important to act now, today, because every year more than 30 million people are displaced because of climate change. That's the urgency.
Right, because obviously migration is a very sensitive issue. We'll get back to that. But people think about migrants as migrants because of poverty, because of war, because of famine, but not so much because of climate. I mean, is the link so obvious?
Oh, yes, it is indeed. We have recently published with the World Food Programme a report on the links between climate change and food insecurity. And food insecurity is one of the reasons why people feel compelled to move. Look to the Sahel. The fact that the desert is progressing, that the lands that are usable for agriculture are shrinking, there are tensions in the communities between farmers and herders in dispute of the very small pieces of land that are preserved from the impact of climate change. But if you look also to conflicts, 12 out of the 18 countries where there are ongoing conflicts couple conflict with climate change and the impact of environmental degradation. So people move because of a number of drivers, but each time more and more, climate change is a driver for migration.
Right. Obviously, there's not a lot of optimism around COP26 on many of the issues that have been put on the table. There's the feeling that the international community, especially the wealthy countries, are not responding strongly enough and fast enough. Is it also your opinion? Are you calling on them to step up to the plate?
I think that the Secretary General of the United Nations made it very clear. This is a red alert. And we expect that the leaders will deliver on mitigation, which means the reduction of emissions in the accorded targets, 2030, 2040, 2050. But at the same time, we need to act immediately because, in fact, the key word here is adaptation. We need to support the communities that are more vulnerable to climate change. For instance, to learn how to build their constructions better to deal with extreme weather events, to start the crops and the vegetables that are more adaptable to the drought. Just to give you one figure, in 2021, 18 extreme weather events in the US occurred, costing to the communities at least $1 billion for each of those events. This means that investing in adaptation is a cost-saving investment in the long run, and that's our appeal to COP26. Put adaptation in the agenda and guarantee the necessary financing to support those communities in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, in Central Africa, but also in Europe and in the United States, in Canada, that are already confronted with the impacts, the terrible impacts of climate change.
Right. I want to get to one of the most worrying situations for you, I assume, Afghanistan. Obviously, there are all the diplomatic tensions, but there is, according to most humanitarian agencies, a disaster unfolding as we speak, and the issue of migration is also there. Can you talk us through what is happening right now in Afghanistan?
Absolutely. Afghanistan is on the verge of becoming the perfect storm. But climate change, especially the most severe drought of the last 20 years, plays a key role. Just to give you an idea, there are more than 5 million Afghans internally displaced. Only in the last few months, 30,000 have been displaced because of the drought. This shows that the economy is on the verge of collapse, 5 million people internally displaced, a terrible impact of the drought in the livelihood of the communities, bringing everything together, plus the political situation. I'm afraid we are confronted with one of the most serious humanitarian crises in the world, and we need to have the mobilization of the international community to support the Afghan people, of which almost 50%. We are talking about more than 23 million people are on the verge of food insecurity, if not famine.
Right, but obviously this brings the political problem on the table, is that you have to engage the rulers, because if you want to have access for humanitarian assistance, you need their green light.
Absolutely. And we make it very clear to the de facto authorities that if the UN is to stay and deliver, and the decision of the Secretary General has been that all humanitarian agencies stay and deliver, we need to have access to the beneficiaries without discriminations. We need to have our full potential at work.
And that's not happening?
Well, it means that men and women that work for the United Nations need to be equally entitled to operate in the country. And we need to have equal access to the beneficiaries, whether they are male or female. What is happening is that there is a lot of uncertainty. Yes, we are deploying our operations in 19 out of the 34 provinces in Afghanistan. But the situation of security is of concern. The terrorist attacks from ISIS are, of course, a threat to the Afghan people, but also to the humanitarian actors. And therefore, we engage in a dialogue with the Taliban to make sure that the conditions are met for the agencies to operate in an independent, neutral, and absolutely integral way in Afghanistan.
And how are they responding to your demands? Are they positively responding or not really?
I would say that the picture is mixed. There are progress indeed. As I told you, we are deploying our operations in 19 provinces, but sometimes the conditions in one province are very different from the conditions in another province. And we have to deal with local commanders to guarantee that our staff has the safety and the necessary conditions to operate. So to be honest, Mark, the jury is still out.
Right. Where the jury is not still out, unfortunately, is Yemen. This is one of the maybe worst crises, often off the radar screens. How bad is the situation in Yemen, in a few words?
Well, from the humanitarian point of view, is very difficult because, as you know, there is really a widespread food insecurity situation in Yemen. And unfortunately, the fighting goes on, especially in the Marib region. There are more than 4 million people internally displaced who are badly in need of humanitarian assistance and, above all, health care, because the situation of the health system is very lousy in the country. So the operational environment is difficult, but the humanitarian agencies of the United Nations system persist in supporting the Yemen population and also the migrants that are in Yemen, because in spite of the war, in spite of the difficult economic situation, there has been a continuous flow of migration, mainly from Africa, East Africa, to Yemen in order to reach the Gulf countries and Saudi Arabia. and we are very concerned with the safety situation of those migrants.
Right. Mr. Director General, in the first half of the year, your organization reported that over 1,100 people died attempting to reach Europe by the sea, double the number from last year. We're seeing Europe essentially close its borders. We're hearing about pushbacks, about migrants being sent back to Libya in very dire conditions there. And more broadly, migrants is becoming a political issue in many European countries, in many Western countries. What is your take on how the issue of migrants is becoming such a sensitive issue, including politically in Western countries?
Mark, I agree with you. Migration has become a very controversial policy area in terms of internal policy and in terms of the relationship between different countries when it comes to address the challenges of migration. But let me be very clear. No single country, not even the most powerful country in the world, can cope alone with the challenges of migration. International cooperation is indispensable, and that's why we stick to the principles of the Global Compact on safe, orderly, and regular migration. The picture that you have given is of utmost concern to us. People dying in the Mediterranean, 3 times more this year than last year, shows that there is a serious problem of lack of resources on safe and rescue in the Mediterranean. We have always said, together with UNHCR, that Libya is not a safe port of disembarkation. And if migration is used in the political debate, making migrants the scapegoat of all the social problems that developed countries face, that is a very negative approach. And of course, we try to produce the evidence that shows that blaming migrants, scapegoating migrants is totally unfounded. And in my view, it's the wrong approach to the real challenges that migration raises to all societies. I don't deny that migration is at the same time an opportunity if migrants migrate regularly, if they contribute to the development of the host communities, but at the same time, there are challenges of integration, of intercultural dialogue, of access to basic services, and those challenges need to be addressed by the countries of destination.
Antonio Vitorino, that's all we have time for. I want to thank you very much for appearing here on the France 24 interview, and thank you all for watching it. Stay tuned for more news.